Welcome to a special website-only episode of Well, That Went Sideways. This is the complete unedited version of our Sideways team conversation. We recently posted an edited version of this conversation, and you may want to listen to that version first. But if you haven't, here's some background. Regular listeners to this podcast know that we often ask our guests to talk about a sideways moment in their life, a time they got into conflict, what happened, how they responded, what they learned. We had one of those moments within our team, and we decided to record ourselves talking about it. The conflict arose during final production of our episode with Antonio Williams about the N-word. What happened is explained during the conversation you're about to hear. This is a completely unedited 2.5-hour conversation, and it does include some long pauses. All 6 members of the Sideways team participated in the conversation you're about to hear. Me, Sam Fuqua, Norma Johnson, Alexis Miles, Jess Rao, Ali Othobani, and Mary Zinn. The first voice you'll hear is Alexis Miles.
So I have an idea I think that might be useful, is for each of us just to go around and just do a quick little mini check-in and just say what we need to feel safe and grounded, as we go into this meeting. So, and something that we do in playback a lot, so is also invoke the presence of someone that we admire, someone who gives us courage, someone who makes us, stand up and just be present for an encounter. So that those are my 2 requests, that we all say what grounds us and allows us to be present for this meeting, and then bring somebody to mind that helps us be grounded in the way we want to show up today for the meeting. And so my request is that we each go around and say what we need, and then officially jump into the meeting. Would Jess, were you saying something? I'm not hearing. I didn't. Oh, okay.
I was just
I,
saying, love it. I
oh,
agree. Love
I
that.
thought I saw your lips moving, but I didn't
Yeah.
hear anything.
Yep. No, love the idea.
Mhm.
I can go. I think both questions for me are related. We can help you get grounded, and the person of people that contribute to that. And for me, it's this team. I think having everybody with such different experiences and backgrounds um, really does help enrich the conversation, but also helps us uh, address things directly. Thus, this conversation we're having today. So I really do appreciate that we have the space and the opportunity to have such conversations, but also have the respect for each other, to understand each other's lived experience and what we're bringing to the table.
And Alia, did you say what you need?
Um, just everybody here who's present and being able to share this opportunity with everyone is good.
Well, I can go. Um, let's see, the question, what keeps us grounded? I think my trust in the team, as Alia said, is high, and that, really grounds me in this conversation and all our conversations. In terms of who grounds me generally, I think of my children, and I try to, if I'm in a difficult situation, try to model behavior for them, and that goes back to when they were little, and I was trying to, be the dad and set the example to model behavior and action in ways that I hope would make a positive impression on them. So I still think about that, even though they're, adults and far away. Um, yeah, and this is just a great team, one of, if not the best team I've ever been a part of. So I just, I don't really need anything other than the trust of the team, which I feel like I have. And for everybody, sorry, to stay pretty close to your computer because that'll get a better sound for your voice.
That's a
Yeah,
good need too.
that's just a practical need. And I chose not to use my regular setup where I have a microphone because I don't want my voice to come out sounding way higher fidelity than everybody else's. So if we all can just be close to our computers and we'll all sound a little better. And that just makes it easier for people to listen to.
Mhm.
Thanks.
I think what keeps me grounded, similarly to Sam, is thinking about all the little ones and the young people in my life and wanting to model and help create a world that I hope is better for them as they inherit everything that we make. And then also what grounds me is my grandmother, who always told me that it was very important to do things that maybe made us nervous or uncomfortable or scared, to push ourselves through those situations and to allow them, because that's where growth and learning happens. So I think that just grounds me in any situation that might be challenging. For my needs today, I don't think I have nothing that hasn't already been said. Lots of trust in the team. I hope that because of the trust in the team, if needed, I can be called in and or called out if that's what's needed too. So my need would be, please be honest and direct with me if that's something that comes up. And then also, if we that we can allow ourselves to take space or pause if we need time to think or to refocus in a conversation.
And I think the thing that helps me be present and grounded and like bring my full self to the table and not just my thinking is like history. We've overcome so much. And there's been so much courage, for generations. And yeah, so that just gives me a great deal of hope and respect for people showing up, just over decades and decades. And the person who helps me remember about kindness and courage and presence and all of that is my brother. And you might notice my email is Swift Miles. That's my brother's name. And he was a remarkable human, remarkable. Someone who just lived fully in his head and in his heart and just displayed that all the time, just naturally so, and very courageous. I mean, when he died, people that I didn't know came up to me and told me how he had impacted their lives. And it was always how he stood up for people. And so not standing in opposition to other people, but standing up for people. Even, and he had a big commanding physical presence. He was 6'4". I'm just very tall. And one friend told me how he was being harassed in a bar. The friend was gay, and apparently gay. And my brother, who didn't know him, came up and just stood next to him, and then started a conversation. Everybody backed down because my brother had that kind of bearing. So just he just brings to mind that piece. And the thing I need, I have half of it, is the trust. And I was just thinking, those moments today when we feel like we want to say something but hold back from saying it because it might hurt somebody's feelings or whatever. I think those are the times we need to speak up the most. Um, rather than just holding those things, just trust. I think there's enough trust here that we can say anything, make any mistake, and then clean it up if necessary, but just get stuff out on the table. So that's my ask and my commitment.
Ooh, boy, everybody said such rich stuff. It's like I have to come up with something. um, really, like, I want to just add to what each of you said because I'm holding all of that as well. Uh, and I especially thanks for suggesting this, Alexis. And I especially love because it's about stories, I guess, about when people are talking about their loved ones, like what they're bringing forward from that. Um, I'm thinking of my dad, Herbie Johnson, who was an outstanding human being. And I'm thinking of him now because, I'm thinking like, well, what would Herbie do? And he would bring some laughter, for one thing. A lot of insightfulness, in very interesting, creative ways, and kindness. And clarity. And that feels like it stands out for me out of the things that I talked about, clarity. Because I feel like that's some of the reason that we're having the conversation is for clarity. But what that means to each person is what will be engaging. But I'm gonna hold and contribute that word of clarity. And Alexis, I like what you said about not holding back. I think I just watched a clip that a friend sent me this morning of Senator Jasmine Crockett and Senator Lee raising the roof in the House. Two Black women that have a lot to say in very amazing, eloquent, powerful ways. And I see in them what I see in what I've seen in my dad for his era and there for this era. Um, and that helps me to understand that we're creating a new era, even in this conversation. Mm-hmm. And so that's what I need, the recognition of that we are creating as we speak. And for all those youngins coming along, and for all the generations forward and backward, what we do here today, I feel, contributes to the energy of that. Yeah, so clarity and forward generation. And healing. Mm.
Thank you, Alexis, for this opportunity for each of us to say what we need and who's with us, supporting us. That's really a lot to think about. I can feel, of course, Elizabeth Loescher. You all know she's in the room. So I'm grateful for all of the things that I've learned and for the experiences. I really feel the support of the experiences that lead me to trust the outcome. That I know that going through this process is healing and is learning. I'm looking forward to learning so much this morning, to really an incredibly deeper understanding. And at the same time, I'm really grateful to my family. I believe they didn't teach me to hate. I don't know how they did that, but they didn't teach me to hate. And I'm really grateful for that. So that's in the room with me today. At the same time, they didn't teach me a lot about other people, about people in different circumstances. I don't know whether they had an awareness of our privilege. And boy, we had it so deep. We have it so deeply. So there's a lot I missed in my education and my upbringing. I'm grateful for what I got, and I'm looking forward to continuing to grow and learn. And this team, I just can't imagine a better group of people to do this with. I just admire you all and love you all so much that there's a lot of trust. I love the idea of taking a pause if we need to. That's really important. That it will be challenging for me, I think, to speak up. Having made the mistake I made, it's really hard to put myself out there to speak up. So thank you for that encouragement. I'll do my best. I believe I can be honest and open, and we'll see how that goes. So, and what do I need? To hold the hope that this is not a mistake that has caused something that cannot be repaired. I'm really hoping for repair, and I need to hold that hope. I think that's it. One thing, I don't know if we're ready to move forward, that I think would be really useful and helpful would be to clarify what brought this conversation to the table, what happened, how did each person, each one of us see what was actually not okay, I guess is where I am. I'm wondering if we have different sense of what wasn't okay, of what went sideways, to use our own language. What if we're not all on the same page? One of the first strategies, I guess, is to define, quote, the problem, and to make sure that we're all talking about the same thing.
I think that's a great idea to say what went sideways.
Would you like me to describe the email I sent? Would that be helpful?
We can start there. I think that would be fun.
In early June, Sam was asking for the wording for an episode about the N-word. And he sent out an email saying, how shall we introduce this episode? And I replied, and I did a number of things, I believe, in that email that were not helpful, that were hurtful, really hurtful. And my teammates let me know it. Thank you. I did not wait for others in the team to respond because I was being efficient. Sam had a time frame and I was wanting to get my response in efficiently, so I did. But I did not wait for people with more experience to reply. I typed out the N-word in that email. And we'll talk about that, but that's what happened in the email. My suggestion for the intro to the episode, to help people not hear the word if they didn't want to hear it, suggested we say the word, and it suggested that a white man, Sam, say the word. Those are the things that I have awareness of that started this conversation. And I would love to have each of us say, if that's their understanding, awareness, concern, what did I miss? What happened in your life at that moment?
Sam, if you're speaking, I don't hear you.
Thank you. I unmuted. I was going to say, Mary, I remember that sequence of events a little bit differently, at least the leading up to your email. Um, as I normally do, I, edited the episode and recorded an intro where I put a disclaimer, a warning that the N-word was going to be used. And I thought about how to word it and kept it fairly succinct. Distributed the episode to the team as is always our practice, so that everybody has a chance to listen and offer any comments if they feel moved to do so before we put it out to the world. And I haven't reviewed the sequence of emails prior to this conversation. I apologize if I'm getting this wrong, but and then I think Norma responded, I think we need a more something more than the disclaimer that is in the episode currently. And that's what, and so that I think is when Mary then wrote the email that you just described. And so as I thought back about, my actions, then I thought I should have perhaps checked with the team to really craft that disclaimer as a group prior to recording it, you know, but perhaps trying to be efficient as well. Um, just thought, well, I think this works, and I know we're going to send it to the whole team to hear. So that's that. But I think if I had taken another step and asked for everybody's input, maybe, that could have been a better process. Anyway, that's my recollection, Mary.
Yes, and I think that's right. I'm not understanding quite, Sam, the distinction. You're saying there had been some previous conversation and Norma's request to look at it again. Is that what you're saying?
Oh, I guess I'm saying no, I don't think there was any previous conversation, and maybe uh, that would have been a better way to approach this, rather than, what I think happened was I just wrote my intro with a brief disclaimer. For listeners who have heard that episode, the disclaimer that's on there now is the result of a team collaborative process. The original disclaimer was much shorter. Do you follow me? Yeah.
Yeah, thanks for kind of doing a review of this because like pieces are coming back. Um, I do remember when you sent that out, as you always do, and it definitely required a disclaimer, but I feel like there was some general conversation around disclaimer anyhow that we were having, like, because I remember doing some research about it after once the conversation got going about different ways that people do disclaimers specifically for the N word, and things like that, derogatory names and stuff. And because I do remember doing that research and then contributing that. Um, and then I believe that Jess also had written something. I wrote something. I'm not sure if anybody else did, um, that we were also considering, because I believe the end resulting one was a combination of those contributions, and then a way to make it most succinct at the same time, just in honor of recording time and so forth. So I'm reviewing this in my mind as we're speaking it. So any other parts that people have, please contribute, because I feel like it's building the picture of what we're diving into.
Well, for this piece, I don't have a lot to contribute. I was late to the party, so to speak. This is when I was working I missed the original emails where I guess some concern was raised. And Mary, thank you for, Mary, you compiled all of the relevant emails and shared them with us. So thank you for that. So my knowledge is just based on the email exchange and not any direct participation. Or I don't even, I think I did read Mary's email and nothing was triggered for me, like in terms of, oh, um, this is a display of white privilege or whatever. You know, that was not my initial response. Um, so I don't have much to add at this point.
Yeah, I don't. I'm similarly. I feel like that captures uh the just the overall picture. I think um the suggestions and ideas came uh after Mary's email too, that you and I were putting together, Norma. I think it came after that a bit too, as part of the email conversation that continued. But yes, because I think Sam's response, or Sam's request, Mary's response was the first option I think that was offered.
Yeah, I don't have anything to add as well. I remember that happening too.
So one thing I thought about is what happened uh, after Mary's email for me. You know, I saw the suggestion that I say the N word, the actual word in the intro, and I had immediate reaction like, no way am I doing that. That just feels wrong to me. But I didn't say that. I was going to type an email and say, no, I'm really uncomfortable doing that. But I said, I really don't necessarily want to be the first person to chime in here. And that's part of my, I guess, work to try to not be always the first person to chime into a conversation. Maybe that's a white male tendency that I've observed in myself over the years and have tried hard to uh, check myself on. Uh, but then a few of us were having dinner a few weeks later. Not everybody, I can't remember who all was there, but Norma was there. Norma, and you said, but Sam, we really need to hear from you. And so and that was a important uh, thing you said to me, Norma, because I'd been thinking like, was that a time when I really should have chimed in immediately, and given my reaction to that suggestion. Um, so anyway, that was sort of the next step in what happened for me was seeing that email, having an immediate reaction, but not sharing that with the team. Does that make sense?
Thanks for sharing that, Sam.
Mhm.
Because what you described is what I feel is more often than not what we do around racist stuff is to not engage or lack of engagement. I felt like when when I saw Mary's email, I had so many feelings. And I did, in my own way, kind of like you did, Sam, but kind of on the other side of the page. Because for me, it's filtered with maintaining comfort for white people. Because as white people, you have the privilege of not addressing it. I knew I was going to address it, but then I had to decide how I was going to go about it. So for me, it wasn't thinking about myself, it was thinking about how to bring this to this team of very respected people that I highly respect and honor. How am I going to honor myself and my reaction? How am I going to bring it up? Because I knew I needed to do something. I knew I wanted to do something with it. And so that's when I know I went into research mode. I spent hours researching wherever it took me about the N word and historical matter, outcomes of using that word, its implications on people's lives. I collected a lot of varied material, which I then contributed. And for me, it was just hoping that it could be received and that it could deepen not only the conversation, but our relationships. Because there's something about racism that is, it's something about racism, white privilege, white culture, and this country that we have to keep a veneer on all the time. And I feel like we're always trying to put cracks in it so that light can get through. And so that was my attempt to do that within the established norm of veneer.
Mm-hmm.
So Norma, I have a question for you. If you were going to raise this as a concern, as something that needed to be put on the table and looked at and explored, if you were to raise that without a veneer, what would the question be, or how would you express it?
Literally, what were you thinking?
Mm-hmm.
And truly, like, as a question, because I never get to hear that.
Mm-hmm.
So Norma, are you asking that question? What were you thinking? And am I right that you would be asking me, Mary, what were you thinking?
Yes.
Okay, well, after we've heard from everybody, I'd be so happy to come back to that. So, yeah, good question.
And I want to add something to the question. So Norma, the way you presented it was as genuine interest and curiosity about what were you thinking? Because frequently when I hear people say that, it's an attack. It's like, what the fuck were you thinking? You know, and what I hear from you is, I want to know this. I want to hear that. So am I right that that's how you're asking?
That's absolutely how I'm asking. Because that's the piece that I don't have. I just I'm on the end of the reactions, but I don't get the insight um, of how people are actually thinking about these things. Um, yeah, and it is curiosity. Mm-hmm.
So am I right that we've heard from everyone, but just about initial reaction to the email? Is that where we still are? Because I definitely want to go back to what you're asking, Norma.
I don't know. Jess, have you contributed to that piece?
Not to the initial reaction piece part. And it, yeah, so I was sitting on my couch, jumping into my personal emails, which I don't always have time to do as much as I'd like, just because of how work is panning out. And so jumped in to do some just quick checking and sideways pod things. Had some tea. It was like just kind of settled on the couch, and had an immediate visceral reaction and kind of exclaimed, "Oh no!" Like that. And Jayla was like, "What? What? Like, what do you need? Are you okay?" And I was just like, "Oh no, we need to have some conversations within the team." Um, and so I just and then I went, my amygdala did the thing and started going, like my heart rate increased and my palms got sweaty, and I started to feel like how similarly to, I think, kind of what you were talking about, Norma, of how do I want to respond to this, and how am I going to respond to this? Like the two different kind of trying to tap into what feels the most productive in terms of how to support a conversation, and also to call attention to what needs attention. And so I actually chose to wait a little bit and not respond, and to think a little bit, and to just talk about my physical reaction, like what was my physical response, rather than launching into a long email that may not have captured really what I wanted to capture. It was just a reactionary email. So I paused for a second before responding, and tried to take the lessons of, like, let's embody, not just think about this, like let's feel it. And so I was trying to tap into empathy of feeling for Norma and Alexis and Alia, trying to tap into the feeling of worry that I had for the impact on our team, trying to resist the urge that the oldest child of folks who have been in trauma a lot tries to fix things and package things up and tries to, like, manage and control and fix. So I was resisting that urge a lot, as well, so that we could all go through a process together, not one that was a managed process, or orchestrated process. So yeah, so there was a lot going on for me in that space, but my initial reaction was like a literal outward, like, oh no, like kind of an expression out loud too.
And I have to say, I really appreciated that emotional response that you contributed because I felt like I couldn't do that. And it meant a lot that you just offered that without any fixing. Um, uh, just that there was emotion involved. I appreciated that you were holding that piece. Mm-hmm.
And can I add to that? Um, just that importance of hearing an emotional response from a white person. Um, I've been in so many settings when things have happened that land so differently on white people and then on the people of color in the room. And so sometimes we're sitting with this big emotional response, and then the white people in the room don't have that response. Um, or if they have an emotional response, it's muted, or they don't feel it, they're not in touch with it or something. So their response and I'm generalizing in this instance, to be conceptual, are watered down. I mean, it's like witnessing somebody get their arm cut off and just saying, "Oh yeah, I had a scratch when I was a kid, on my arm." I mean, that's what it feels like. The response feels like. So, just thank you for saying that. I'm just seconding Norma that to hear that level of emotional response feels like it um, it feels like really being in touch with the experience and humanity of someone who does not look like you. So thank you.
And Alexis, just the way you described that really points out, and this may answer Norma's question about what were you thinking, the thoughtlessness, frankly, the thoughtlessness that in sending that, I was getting the job done. Sam asked a question. He had a time constraint. And my lack of understanding of that experience, and I thought, I'm pretty far along in this work. I thought I knew a lot. But boy, this was like a guillotine coming down, frankly. It was like, no, you don't know. You don't know. How could I not know not to type out that word? How would I have come this far and not know what that was going to feel like or what it meant to people? Could I even have considered doing that? And I'm not going to say that I represent all white people or what they were thinking or what they would have done. I want to be really clear that I can only speak for my own experience and ignorance. That to suggest that a white man say that, Sam, I so much appreciate your initial reaction. I'm not doing that. You kidding? And so it went to the depth of my ignorance. And I thank Norma and Jess so much for their responses that sent me into a pretty horrible spiral of shame, embarrassment, realizing that this mistake was big, huge, and pointing out my ignorance. I hold this team in such high regard that I don't know if I can think of another group of people I would want to hold me in high regard more than this group of people. So to do this with you was pretty horrifying. And it struck at all the shame that I learned as a child. So I became so ashamed that I was paralyzed, really. I was afraid that anything I said beyond that point would make it worse. I couldn't imagine what I could do if I misstepped again. I wouldn't, I don't know how I could have repaired myself. I really was in a place where of immobilized by the realization, thank you, Jess, and thank you, Norma, of what I had done. So, Norma, I can't say I was thinking well. I responded quickly. I addressed the task at hand. And I'm so fortunate to have people in my life who will call me in and say, Mary, this isn't okay. Do you have any idea what you've done? Because I didn't. I really didn't. And Norma, I appreciated the research that you did, that I looked at, that explained to me how other people had dealt with it. And I didn't know, I mean, I really didn't know the impact of using that word. I didn't get it. And so now I'm wondering, oh my God, what else don't I get? There's so much that I don't get. And Norma, I hope that answers your question at least a little bit.
Thanks for sharing that, Mary. It was good to listen to your process with it, because it's so different from mine. And it makes me think, because it was the N word is so much I get to see, because to me it's so obvious, and it's so plagued with eons of time and outcomes that I still live with. And to actually get to hear that it's not anything like that for you is just something I'm sitting with. And it was good to listen.
So, Norma, as you say that, I'm curious to know, clearly, I missed it. I'm sure it was taught to me, and how did I miss it? So I would love to know, perhaps from others who got it, who get it, and now I think I'm getting it. When did you first learn, or how did you come to know that this word held as much as is being described here for people who are not Black? Where did you learn that? Because it may be important for us to recognize the missed learnings and what's available. I just don't know how I didn't get it, or was I just thoughtlessly moving too fast? I don't know, but I would ask Sam and Jess in particular, I guess, Alia, maybe if you know, where did you learn it? Where did you get it?
Um, my perspective is a little different in that I did not grow up in the United States. And in this part of the world, the N word is used based on pop culture, the globalization and export of Hollywood and the American hip hop culture, unfortunately, has largely influenced how the N word um, appears in societal norms. And because in this part of the world, many people don't have the history behind what this is, and also how hip hop culture, for example, adopted it, why it was adopted, and why is it used within certain contexts. Uh, my exposure to it was people using it as a cool term, right? Not only between Black people, but also non-Black people. And so it's not until I came to the United States that I understood the gravity of that word and the history behind it and the meaning behind it. Now, in this part of the world, particularly in Kenya, we do have certain derogatory terms for certain groups of people. It exists. But the N word, unfortunately, was exported out of the US without context. And so for me, the learning did happen when I was in the environment, and I've never used the word. It's not a popular term that's used here, but my understanding of it changed when I came to the US and started to understand the context and the history behind the term.
Thanks, Alia. Mary, I want to make sure I'm understanding what you're asking. Could you just help me one more time with the question?
Yes, happy to, Sam. What Alia just said helps me remember that I need to clarify even before I pose this question again. I knew never to say the N word. I would never do that. That I knew. How it didn't translate into writing it in that email, I don't know. But I want to acknowledge that in my learning, I knew never to say it. And so I understood to some extent how horrible using it is. And then, Sam, my question was, as a white person, when and how did you learn about the N word? That you know what's appropriate and what isn't.
Well, so my experience of it was as a derogatory term, not through a pop culture lens. I'm older than Alia, and I grew up in an all-white suburb of Detroit. I lived in Detroit when we were little, and my parents were part of the white flight, as it was called, in the 1960s, and we moved to a white suburb adjoining Detroit, and um, I can remember at least one specific incident when I was a teenager, being in a car full of teenage boys, from the suburb going downtown, And the driver of the car cut off. He just did a quick lane change and cut off a motorcycle cop, Detroit motorcycle cop. And the cop actually went down, like, and, but got back up, put on his siren, pulled over the car, and, gave the driver a ticket, right? So I'm in this car, these teenage boys, and, African American police officer. And, did you see what you were doing? No, sorry. Got the ticket. And then the driver of the car cursed, after the interaction was over, cursed the cop and used the N-word. And of course, I knew exactly what that usage was about. That was a derogatory term used by an angry white male teenager. But I didn't say anything, and I think back about that and I feel guilt and shame about that, about not speaking out, saying, hey, you know, you cut the guy off. That is a terrible thing to say, but I didn't say it. So that's just an example that I think of from my, you know, uh, youth that um, I don't know if it answers your question, but it certainly is, an example of how I understood the term, and I think I understood its usage in that context as a term of violence and hate. You know, so I definitely grew up knowing that that was a derogatory term because I saw it used by, some of the kids that I hung out with, and I didn't speak up. I was raised in the church, and I knew, uh, I hope a basic, moral compass from that and from my mother, but uh, didn't translate into right action to me.
Yeah, I'm trying to think. I don't know fully where that learning came. Um, I know I have a small handful of memories from kindergarten. I had to change schools in the middle of kindergarten, and of the two memories I had at one school, the single only um, from kindergarten through high school, the only black teacher I had was at my uh, kindergarten class at Lumberg Elementary, which is one of the lower socioeconomic elementary schools in my area. And I have a distinct memory of learning about the I Have a Dream speech in that class and being really both upset and um, having a lot of like being inspired. Like I remember, and we did like an art project around it. Um, so that was like my first memory of being taught about, like formally taught about racism in general. Um, but I don't know. I know that in high school we read To Kill a Mockingbird, and I was told when we get to this word, don't say it out loud. Um, so I know that. I'm just trying to piece together the little spots. I don't know. What I do think too is that over the last probably 10 or 15 years, as anti-racism work has moved from a very like intellectual thing for me and within lots of white communities that are trying to do anti-racism work, that moving from this like stuck in my head learning about the words that I should and shouldn't say and those kind of things has moved more toward an embodied, mindful, like visceral approach. And I think that's helped significantly because I think I can identify with, well, I'm told not to say this word and therefore I won't say it. Like there's a very clear rule that's there. And my very like Germanic white brain likes to say, yes, there's a very clear rule, and I just won't do that. And what can be hard sometimes for me that I have to practice is like, it's not just black and white. Everything is so nuanced, and I have to extrapolate, and I have to feel, and I have to pause, and I have to listen, and I have to listen carefully to expand my understanding of whatever it is. So I know over those like probably 10 or so years that that's really been helpful, is like the settling and deepening in. But I can't pinpoint exact moments. I can pinpoint moments not necessarily of someone in my family using the N-word, but being very racist towards Black folks and saying things that were really horrible about Black people, but I can't, there wasn't like a moment that I can think of. So I don't know fully.
And Mary, I'd like to ask you the same question. When and how did you learn about it?
Thank you, Norma. I'm not sure I can answer it. I don't have those incidents, and I should allow that in general, I don't have a good memory of my childhood. I just don't have memories of childhood. Somewhere along the way, I certainly learned what Jess was talking about, a rule that you don't do that. And what it was connected to, but not in this visceral way, Jess, that you're describing. Not in a way that I think with many things now, it hurts me physically when it hurts someone else. And those are the things that I've learned to really take in. If it's just intellectual, it's back to what Alexis was describing, is that arm being cut off. If you're looking at it as a science experiment or something at a distance, that's not the same thing as being connected to it or feeling any inkling even of what another person is experiencing. So while I can't remember specific experiences of having heard the N-word used, I do know that that intellectual piece of not doing it was put in place. And I just realized that I can't imagine what a Black person wants to convey to or do to, or, what is that emotion that if I could help that white person get it, or do I just want to punch him in the nose? Do I just want to, do something that would be a physical release for me so they'd really understand how much it matters, how much it hurts? I understand that I can't have a Black experience. I won't. But I certainly want to be able to empathize and connect with people for many, many emotions, for their joy, for their wonderful experiences, and for their horrific experiences, that we're all connected to each other. And it's my intention and my hope to be part of that. So what do we do with people, as you are calling me in? And how do we really get past what they did? I'm not sure. One of my concerns is we won't get past. I know we'll get to a better place, but I don't know if we'll get past. And I'm not in any hurry to do that at this point in this conversation, but it is in the back of my head, a concern. So
oh, good.
go ahead, Jess, please.
Yeah. I was just saying, I'm not sure that even the goal of past is the one that resonates with me at all. I don't even know that that would be a goal that I'd be looking for. It would be how do we move through, and what comes after whatever that is. And so, like, to me, getting past means like we're over it, we're done with it, it can live over there. And I actually don't think that that's very helpful for almost any conflict as we're thinking about conflict resolution, like getting past it. It's moving through and what do we do differently and how do we interact from that point forward more for me. So I just know I was just like, oh, get past. Like I'm not sure that would be a goal for me at any point.
I want to comment on something that's bubbling up in me, and that's how we live in such different worlds. Because to me, it's like, and Mary, I'm not pointing this at you. This is society in general. How can it be that that word carries so much weight for me that is so diminishing for me? And that not be understood by everybody. It's like, yeah. And it's not, my parents never set me down and said, here's this word. And if you hear this word, I knew it. When people hurled that word at me, I knew it was them saying, I'm trying to not use profanity today. You are effing inferior. You don't deserve to be on this earth. Go the F back where you came from. Um, I spit on you. Um, you are beneath my notice. There's something appalling, sickening, degraded about you. I mean, that word carries so much weight. Um, and no, my parents didn't have to teach me that. I experienced that when people said that word to me. Um, and, you know, as a child and adults saying that word to me, and maybe I don't know what was in their heads. I do believe that, you know, they grew up in a culture where they were taught that Black people were the lowest of the low. I mean, they were the scum you scrape off your foot. That anything wrong in the community was because of these effing N-word folks. Um, and that was in their bones. That was deeply in their bones. Um, and I guess so it's just surprises me when people say, when people don't understand that weight when I carry it every day. To me, you know, it's a little bit like sitting in a room and some people are saying, oh my God, I smell smoke. It's so strong. I can barely breathe. And other people are just sitting there sipping their coffee. I don't smell anything. I don't smell anything. Um, it's to me, it's like these worlds coexist with each other. And I know there's so much intersectionality. I know that people who hold other identities have that same feeling. How can people not know how painful it is for me to be called certain words or certain names? Um, yeah, yeah. But it is as if we somewhat coexist in different worlds.
Thank you for sharing that, Alexis. I'd like to answer the question you put out as well, Mary, about how did I learn? It was in my body. I don't remember ever not hearing the word. Interestingly, a whole lot of it came from within the culture. Because that's what internalized racism does. It gets used in with a different energy, but it's still from the same root. I also grew up in a very multicultural environment, people from many different countries. And as a kid, one of the first things you learn in the other languages are the derogatory words. So there were N words for everybody. But I always, everybody, in fact, understood that Black people in America were seen as what Alexis talked about, the lowest of the lowest. So no matter what group came in, if they were not Black, they some of them already had that concept when they came. That's how prolific the understanding of that concept was globally. And if they didn't have that understanding, they quickly learned it. And so I felt that around me as well. But it was just in my body, the the knowing of what that word is. As we were talking, I kept seeing those images, some of those famous photographs during the civil rights era, where people are carrying their signs, or especially that big banner hanging from the NAACP office, "A man was lynched today." Mm-hmm. And in my household, we had like all the Black periodicals. We had all the Black magazines and the newspapers and everything. And as a child, I grew up knowing and reading the stories of people still being lynched in my lifetime. It wasn't in the white news at that point, but I knew about it, and I knew that word was connected with those people hanging from trees, those people having unimaginable violence perpetrated on them and their families and their communities. And even though I grew up in the North, in a fairly integrated environment, there were places I knew I could not go. There were whole communities I knew not to travel through. And all roads literally led back to that word. It represented the incredible violent experience of my Black ancestors. And the people around me, the adults around me, every single one of them had escaped some violence that was being perpetrated and lived to tell about it. So I grew up with the stories of people's real experiences. And I also, you know, as I'm listening to all the sharings here, it's it's almost like an unexplainable starkness in difference of experience, as Alexis was alluding to. I don't even have a way to consider not considering it. It just doesn't even exist for me to have that choice. Yeah. Um, it's just in my bones.
And for me, it's not just historical, but a day-to-day reality. Um, when I look at the composition of the prison system, for example, and just the disproportionate number of people of color, and then the disproportionate number of Black folks. When I see, but I have friends, some of my white friends feel safer when they see police officers. I feel fear. What's going to happen here? What should my demeanor be, you know, when they stop me? And those kinds of things. Um, and just the whole thing about race, how it sits differently with us. I know that so many of my white friends don't have an experience of their whiteness. I mean, they can now, and now it's easier for them to say, okay, yes, I am white. I am a white person. Before it was hard for people to only even say that, because they would say to me, when I look in the mirror, I just see a person, you know, that's what I see. I see a person. And they were being honest. They didn't see or feel the weight of their skin color. And it does have a weight. Other people feel the weight, you know, even if you don't feel it. And I try to understand it by trying to find analogies in my own life. What is it I don't see because it's not my day-to-day experience, or because I don't know the history and all of that. Um, but it is still hard to to grasp that other people don't feel the weight the way I feel the weight of race, you know. And Norma, what you were saying about people coming over here, immediately feeling, oh yeah, you know, I'm I'm this higher on the scale because the Black people are down here. And they'll always be down here. And some people even use the Bible to justify that, because God cursed the sons of somebody, I don't know, the story of Ham, or I don't know the exact story. Some people still use that reference, you know, to justify why Black folks are at the bottom of the barrel. So enough. And I'm sorry. I guess I'm just saying all of this. And I don't mean I'm just saying this. I'm saying this because it is a great wonder in my mind about how we coexist and rub along, and but carrying such different realities and perceptions um about the world.
Mhm.
Alexis, thank you. And Norma, thank you for reminding us that we are in these parallel existences. We're not sharing the same experience. We didn't share the same experience growing up. And thank you to everybody for going back over how you came to know about the N-word. Thank you for that. How I guess our podcast is really all about our living these lives that kind of look similar, but they're not really at all. They're these spaces that we don't really share. And so these things happen out of ignorance or efficiency or whatever the cause is. These things happen that are so devastating to people who have a different experience. And how do we manage together as best we can and love each other wholly? I'm wondering how this hurt, since we're talking about a specific thing that happened. It does, and Jess, you point out it isn't over, it doesn't end. I appreciated that. It's not past. It's something that will carry with us going forward. How do we absorb it? How do we best honor it? What do we do with it? I guess is my question to the team members.
My response to that is first just believe it. Period.
I'm sorry, Norma, say it again. I missed is first to
Just believe it. Period. Without needing to transform it into anything else or to get to a solution or to do anything. I want to share a poem. It's called I Can't Believe It. And this was written in 2020, a very explosive year. In response to the series of police murders of Black unarmed men, women, and children, Michael Brown, Tamir Rice, Sandra Bland, Eric Garner, Philando Castile, George Floyd, Breonna Taylor, and, and, and may you rest in peace. I can't believe it. That's what some of my white friends are saying. But what if you did? Would that begin to change things? Or might it change you? Your disbelief costs us.
Norma, you hit on something there. That thing, I've had friends say stuff like, well, if you just approach it differently, or like like if I describe something that like describing being followed in Target and in Whole Foods when I'm shopping, you know, with credit cards and cash money in my pocket, ready to pay these merchants, and I'm being followed. And I was telling some white friends about it, and one of them said, are you sure? You know, or maybe it was just a coincidence, you know. I don't, you know, nobody's ever followed me in a store. Um, that, um, well, why can't people be more respectful when the police stop them? You know, if they were more respectful, the police wouldn't get aggressive with them and they, you know, they wouldn't, you know, beat them up and all of that stuff. But that disbelief that, oh, it must be something that you did, or you must be imagining it, because that never happens to me. Um, um, and yeah, that's enough. But Norma, when you read that, that's what that brought up for me, my personal experiences of people denying my experience because it never happened to them. And not really believing that something could happen just because of this this chemical in my system that makes my skin darker.
Yeah, that piece is part of my collection of poems for my white friends, right? And um, when those killings of unarmed Black people uh, first became media news, um, so much was stirred up in me that I knew I wanted to say something. And for me, that was translating into, writing something. Um, and nothing came. And then there was another murder, and then there was another. And what I know is that that one that is publicized represents hundreds. Um, and with each one, the emotions were building and there, and certainly when I'm in Black community, uh, the pot is simmering violently, boiling, and words just didn't come. The words weren't coming. The words weren't coming. It was like I was holding too much. I couldn't even define it. And then a white friend said that to me. I can't believe it. And I kind of said it like that. I can't believe it. And then another white friend would say, I can't believe it. And then another white friend would say, I just can't believe it. And then it was like this was over and over and over and over and over. And then it came to me. It was like, oh, it's not my words that I need to use, it's theirs. They have the words that I'm looking for to talk about. I was thinking I needed to talk about these murders. I needed to talk about what happens to people that look like me. But then what I got was no. What I really want to talk about is the absence of the talk.
Norma, it seems like a good space to read the original poem to my white friends. Do you feel like that?
Sure. Give me a moment to grab it. I actually haven't done that one in quite some time. There was a time I was doing it all the time.
As you're looking for that too, a couple of things that have come up for me are around believing, like, and believing and the connection to deeply listening, and that those two things have to go together. Partially because I listened again to the episode, to Antonio Williams' episode this morning before this, and I was just, I was just like, what level are we listening to? If we can listen to that episode and then still utilize the full word in written or spoken context. Like, it feels to me like there might be a surface level listening, but not that deep listening. And without deep listening and believing kind of going together, it feels like that's critical. It has to be a deep listening and a believing. So yeah, it was just coming up for me just around the listening piece and trying to be really aware of how are we listening as you're sharing your poems, as we're listening to the podcast, as folks are telling us here's the rules of what to do and what not to do. How are we, as white folks, listening and then also believing is what came up to me.
Mm-hmm.
So, Jess, can I ask you, what gives you the capacity to listen so deeply?
I think practice, like practice. Yeah, I think practice for sure. And it goes back to something you said, Alexis, too, where you were talking about how sure there's intersections. Like, sure, there are folks who hold various identities who might also feel dehumanization. But so as a non-binary transgender person, there's terms that can be used, there's things that can happen to me, there's all this stuff. And I know that my whiteness protects me and I know that though because I can tap into that empathy, like I can tap into, well, I know what it feels like to be dehumanized, and I know that there's a deeper level of dehumanization even beyond what I experience, and that is like, and I think that's just from listening, believing, observing, connecting. I think it's from those places. And so I don't know what gives me the capacity other than putting myself in situations where I have to continue to practice and continue to practice.
Thanks for that, Jess.
Mm-hmm. Thank you. I want to tag on another question for you, Jess. I'm just formulating it.
Mm-hmm.
When you talk about the practice and putting yourself in situations,
Mm-hmm.
I have to wonder, because I myself am on the other end of relationships with white people.
Mm-hmm.
Does, let's see, I'm just trying to formulate it. Well, I'll just say what I got on it, and I think you'll get the understanding.
Mm-hmm.
I'm wondering about and if there's connection with you beginning to absorb this level of understanding. Is there a connection with actually being with more people of color, and having relationships that expand a greater depth than just the other person at work, or those simple relationships that I find white people take a lot think are a lot deeper than they are.
Mm-hmm.
Because I know from my end, when I'm in relationship with white people, where we're having these conversations, where we're actually sharing and talking and having exchange, the value of those relationships is way deepened.
Mm-hmm.
And another piece I want to throw into this before you even respond to that is something that I think white people generally may not think about or even understand is that for all those that are navigating white supremacy, white culture, whiteness, um, in response to the negativeness that they receive and experience, we learn to live biculturally, meaning we can be in our kind of native culture, but worldly wise, we're engaged with white culture all the time. And also for those of us that have been here a long time, generationally, we've learned how to engage with white culture, largely because that's what keeps us safe. And so we understand a lot of things about white culture, uh, where a lot of times white people don't even understand it, because that's, of course, how the system works. So I'm just throwing that piece in too to help broaden out our conversation. This bicultural understanding that we know how to be white as well as be whatever our culture, our native kind of culture is. And that's an advantage in a lot of ways when we're looking at something like race.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah, I 100% think that relationships, connections, deepening relationships are the key factor. Like that is the key to the evolving learning that I have and continue to have. I think absolutely, and I think um, I think the ability to not equate but tap into empathy around my own identities is another piece that has been helpful. So deep relationships, deep listening, tapping into the and not equating but extrapolating like and understanding through empathy of identities, and yes, like exposure to what whiteness means and what it is, like understanding what whiteness is, and then being able to say, wait a second, that is absolutely a piece of whiteness ideology or white culture, like having that veil pulled away or having that curtain, seeing behind that curtain is another key part of it for sure. And then not taking that personally, not thinking therefore like that means I'm bad and evil and wrong, and that mistakes, like, because that's a whiteness thing, right? A mistake means you're a bad person, and that's not true. That's a whiteness framework. And so I think the again practicing and being with folks who are willing to dive deep into that has been really helpful. I don't know if that answered your question, but yes, I do think relationship is critical.
So,
No, go ahead, Mary.
well, the Brian Stevenson NPR piece talked about proximity. And this comes to mind just when you're talking about interacting with people who are unlike yourself. And I would like to pose the question, does it seem ingenuous to try and reach out and get to know people who are not like me? Does it have the sense of, oh, she's just doing that for whatever reason? when proximity is so valuable and so important. And that is how you get to know other cultures, other ways of being, other experiences. And how do we keep from being seen as superficial in that?
I think it's the reason I smile is like just not being superficial in it. I think can help. Like it's not. It doesn't need to be complex in those ways. Like just, um, yeah. I know you and I have talked about this a couple of times, Mary, and it's a tough one to navigate for sure. It can be a tough one to navigate, but
Yeah. And I'd like to say something to that from someone who's, especially in the DEI spaces and things that I roll in the equity spaces. Um, when white people are well intentioned in reaching out and so forth, I'd say, and I'm not speaking for all Black people, I'd say that it's always a good thing. And this is a big and, my day is filled with race.
mm-hmm.
And depending on what and how much I've been dealing with that day, that week, depending on how I'm feeling in the moment, all of those things are part of my response to someone with good intentions reaching out in that way. And that's just a fact.
Mm-hmm.
And I say that so that that's a part of the understanding. Doesn't mean, kind of like just like you're saying, that you're a bad person or don't ever do that again, or it doesn't mean any of those things.
Mm-hmm.
It just means I have an experience of race all the time. White people are experiencing race too, but just very differently. Uh, so good-natured attempts sometimes might be received, sometimes might be thwarted. Thwarted. Is that a word? Thwarted? Help me out, y'all.
Fraught. Just
What is
fraught.
it?
Just fraught.
Fraud. Okay.
Yeah.
And that's something to really understand and allow to be a part of all of it, because it is not cut and dry. It's not yes, no. It's not any of those kinds of things. It's complicated, at least on my end. So in terms of that, there may not be just right answers, but as Jess was sharing, continual practice is important. Is important. And I'm so glad that we're having this conversation. Okay, Alexis requested the I Didn't Tell You poem. So this was the first poem I wrote in the series of poems for my white friends, and it's called I Didn't Tell You. I didn't tell you about my real life, the one that haunts me most days. It comes in moments at a time, triggered by a look, an attitude, a sensing of superiority, of blatant ignorance, of good meaning intention, dripping crap down my face. I didn't tell you about the look they gave me when I opened my door and they saw Black me standing there, their mouths agape, their thoughts running loudly through my head. I didn't tell you about being followed through the store and how I obediently kept my hands and my bag in plain sight. I didn't tell you how quickly they look away when I catch them staring at me in the restaurant or standing in the supermarket line. I didn't tell you how the clerk pretended the white woman had been standing at the counter before I had and waited on her first. I didn't tell you how I have to take a really deep, long breath every time before I walk into a room full of white people. I didn't tell you that in the meeting, the classroom, and the workshop, when the subject of diversity comes up, they all look at me as if I am the spokesperson for the whole nation of people of color. And I didn't tell you that when diversity isn't mentioned and needs to be, I'm too often the one who has to point it out. I didn't tell you how many times white people say to me in one way or another, "You're different," because they felt comfortable with me and that didn't fit their mold of what they figured a Black person was like. I didn't tell you how disappointed that white man was when, after eagerly questioning me, found out that I was not the exotic Nubian he had fantasized, but just another Negro girl from New Jersey. I didn't tell you about the white woman, a stranger who chose out of all the white people around us to sit next to me and proceed to tell me all about her favorite Black performers and her Black friends and how this country needs to take integration to the next level. So I could see how her life is an example of that. I didn't tell you about the anger I stuffed down when that dreadlocked young white boy gave me a high five and called me sister. I didn't tell you about the white woman I passed at twilight in the park, who tensed her body, tightened the grip on her purse, and walked a large curved detour past me. I didn't tell you that my stomach clenches when I see a police car because it means I may not be safe. I didn't tell you that your world is not mine and that we are virtual worlds apart. I didn't tell you that while you can somehow think of yourself as multi-ethnically expansive because you have a Black friend, I, meanwhile, just still stay Black. I didn't tell you that while you can walk boldly into any place you choose, I always have to consider where I am, who I'm with, and how I'm going to affect people. I didn't tell you how your liberalism chokes me sometimes as you sit in judgment of someone you don't even know. I didn't tell you that being a good person and being clueless can come in the same package. I didn't tell you about the comments you made that would take a lifetime of explaining how you've bought into the system that keeps us all in our place. I didn't tell you about my day because I had been taught not to. And you have been taught not to even consider it. I didn't tell you about my day because then I would have to live it all over again. And I have to save that for tomorrow.
Thank you, Norma. Thank you so much. That really helps delineate, clarify those worlds that we live in that are so disconnected, that as much as we want to reach out to each other, our experiences are so different. It brings me to the point where I don't remember what the line was, that a good person can also be clueless. That's what it was. And it brought it all home. That I think I'm a pretty decent person, but I'm clueless too. So thank you for that. And when we were in person, not all of us were there. I think, Alexis, you were not there in late, I think it was July. And I apologized in person, but I haven't apologized to the group in writing or whatever. And I just need to, as you asked about needs, Alexis, to say, I'm sorry. I'm sorry I wrote the email. I'm sorry for the harm it caused. And boy, if I could take it back, I would. I would not hit the send button again on that one, I'll tell you. I'm grateful for this opportunity that we've had to learn more deeply about the inward and about each other's experience. I'm grateful that Jess, you just mentioned that making a mistake is not equivalent to being a bad person. I will tell you that it feels like it very deeply. To make a mistake feels like a bad person. And since June, I've done a lot of therapy around this incident with the Sideways team. And I'm trying to shift my vocabulary from mistake to learning opportunity. Because I did make a mistake. And with your help, it's a learning opportunity. And I'm going to make mistakes again. I'm going to screw up. There's no getting around it. So I'm just so grateful, and I'm so sorry.
Thank you, Mary. And one of my first thoughts, feelings is when I look at systems, structures, foundational principles, how shame and guilt are used as instruments to keep people from moving forward. So shame and guilt divert our attention from building deeper relationships, in my opinion. And I think there's a deliberate manipulation of those feelings so that we feel that way. And that's it. I just wanted to say that I believe it's a divide and conquer technique that keeps people from coming together in meaningful ways. I'm not saying that it's wrong to feel those things. I'm just saying that there's a societal way of manipulating those feelings so that we don't take any action. So we don't go get therapy, or we just get so stuck in that spot that we don't do anything. And you said you're grateful for the conversation. I am glad you wrote that email, because I don't think we would be having this conversation right now had that not happened. And for myself, like seeing the Brian Stevenson video woke me up to the fact that I have a lot of unprocessed trauma, related to race and being an innocent child, being called that name on an almost daily basis, of choosing to go to a school because I thought I was going to make friends, an all white school. I thought I was going to make this boatload of friends, and not having anybody speak to me for my entire 8th grade year in a humane way, except my history teacher, Miss Bishop, who I love to this day because she was my light. She was my one light every day. Otherwise, nothing but the N-word, KKK posters on my locker and all of that. So I'm diverting from the other thing that I was trying to say, but I'm glad we're having this conversation. So it's brought up in me some things I need to look at and heal. And Jess, thanks for the conversation earlier about post PTSD. I mean, complex PTSD. And I would say that probably everybody Alia, I don't know about your circumstance, but anybody who grew up in the US grew up knowing terrorism, um, violence, racially related. So, so yeah. So Mary, I am thankful that you wrote that email because it opened up something. It created a crack, as Norma was saying earlier, for some light to get through. Because I think if we had this conversation as just a conceptual thing, like no precipitating event, but we just made a decision, oh, we should talk about race, it would have been a different conversation. I think it would have been really heady. Mhm.
Thank you, Alexis. And I'm grateful, of course, that we're having this conversation. And I'll be happy for someone else to take a turn having a learning opportunity this blatant. You okay if it's somebody else's turn next time? And I will do it again. I won't do it on purpose. But if I want to keep learning, I understand that this will happen. We will learn from each other when things go sideways.
Mhm.
Additionally, I have something that is on my mind that was really hard, that I just need some feedback from the team. In June, July, and August, there were a lack of response to emails. And I couldn't help thinking that it had to do with what I had done, that I felt ostracized. So I need to check in with the team as part of this conversation. Was there some of that? Was it, I just can't talk to Mary right now? Was it something else? I don't know what happened, but there was a lapse in email responses during the summer. And I took it, I don't want to guess what it meant. I'd rather ask you directly.
Mhm.
Well, I can say that my lack of response was just related to the world I was in at that time. My attention was almost entirely consumed with the intense work situation. So I was barely reading emails. Yeah. So no, in fact I felt a bit removed from everything. Um, and I had heard that, oh, something happened via email. I mean, I knew the outer edges of things. So yeah.
Mhm.
So there was no intent or animus or anything there.
Thank you, Alexis.
Similarly, I mentioned earlier, but personal email's hard for me to keep up on right now, and has been for several months in general. And I know I've mentioned this a couple of times. I feel like this team, that's just not the most effective way for us all to communicate. Uh, Norma, you've said to me before, like, I noticed you went on, like, I'll take a month's worth of Sideways Pod emails and respond to each of them in one day, like just a chunk of Sideways Pod emails, just because it's a lot to manage right now with work too. So no, I will say that there was um, where Sideways Pod typically feels like a very easy place to be and to connect and engage, there is a bit more of this is something that moved an inch closer to this is a challenging, hard thing in addition to all the other challenging, hard things, but not so much that I wasn't responding to emails for that reason. It definitely was just a little bit of okay, we still have to have this conversation. This is feeling, there's an element to it that felt a little less easy, but it wasn't a Mary, I won't respond to you or don't want to respond to your messages. It's just a very tricky thing for me to even get to emails, personal emails right now.
Thank you, Jess.
Mhm.
Yeah, and Mary, I apologize for any disrespect or feeling of exclusion that my lack of response may have incurred or led to on your behalf. It's just my own disorganization and my sort of method of responding or not responding to email. It had nothing to do with the email that prompted our discussion. I'll try to do better. Sorry about that. Um, and coming back to the email in question, I am glad that it prompted the discussion we've been having. And I'm also glad for you because I wouldn't be part of it without you. So thank you.
Mhm.
That comes from Sam, who initiated the whole podcast idea.
Mhm.
So yes, thank you, Sam. Right back at you. Yeah.
As for me, I get flaky on emails. That's it. I get so many, and I literally, I just tune out a lot of times.
Mhm.
It's not just yours. I do equal opportunity.
Yep.
Well, I can't remember whether I responded or not, but I think I speak to you a lot more often than the rest of the team. So it's sometimes hard to keep up whether we've had a conversation or whether I've responded to an email. But I honestly can't remember.
Well, thank you all. It's frightening or scary to not know. Excuse me. It's frightening or scary to not know how we're going to be moving forward.
Mhm.
I would really like to come back to the team as my full self, but I'm skittish. I don't want to do this again. I love that we're having the conversation, but it was months of really difficult times for me. And I love the trust in the team and knowing that the outcome that we would pursue a pathway, as Jess says, to go through it. I trusted all of that. I'm grateful for it, but it was really painful.
Mhm.
How do we not lose people who are going to make these mistakes and have these opportunities to learn? How do we not lose them? It's another conversation perhaps for another time, but it would have been so easy to say, it hurts.
Mhm.
And I know that resonates as a white person who can't take it, I get that. And it's real. It's real.
It is, and I think it's very real. I've felt those things too. And that's what I mean as part of the practice because we, and you know this, Mary too, I'm not saying anything you don't know, but we have the ability to say, I'm going to disengage. There's a sense of urgency of needing to package things up and close things up as a result of our acculturation, our socialization as white folks. There's a fear that we're bad people and that we're being pushed out or ostracized, or that if we've caused harm, then we're bad people. There's all of those things wrapped up, and what I always have to remind myself is that that is probably nothing in comparison to what, when I make a mistake that is based in racism, my colleagues, my friends who are have the impact of that mistake have to deal with and feel too. And so the fact that that Norma and Alexis, Leah could have easily said on that first day, "I'm out. I don't want to deal with this," and didn't. And while there were starts and stops to our ability to even have the conversation because of schedules, because of emergencies, because of things that came up, that that there's one of the most important things to do is to keep showing up and to let it play out the way that it needs to play out. And so just I appreciate you sticking with that resilience, Mary, and it's really, really, really important to keep doing that, because we might want things to go on a specific timeline and it can't always go on that specific timeline. And our team is so committed to being all together for this conversation, so that naturally was going to draw it out too. We all have lots that's going on, so just remembering that yes, it is very real, and that's part of what we need to do in order to keep showing up as white folks, is to manage through that hard stuff, that challenging emotional lift of these types of conversations.
Yeah, thank you both for what you've been sharing. I want to speak to the poem I didn't tell you, because it came out of all of this. It came out of the unendingness, that there's no finite place to land, that it's that unending, that it's that ongoing. And what I've learned, again, through my bicultural lens and all those I can't believe it's, is that seems to be a very difficult concept for my white friends, that it's that expansive. But I feel that that's something to continually embrace about this topic of race, the N word, which represents it in so many ways. That's a concept in itself to embrace. The open-endedness of it, the open-endlessness of it. And that it's a generational, I even hesitate to say solution, but it's a generational evolution, because we wouldn't all be sitting here even able to have this conversation if we haven't been standing on the shoulders of many that have implemented and put in place another step and another step and another step. And that embracing that is powerful. And it can't be rushed. It can't be finalized, because it's that human. And Alexis, I have a question for you. Why did you request me to share that poem?
Because my memory of it was a series of specific examples of what's not revealed, what's not shared, um, with people, that we love, that we're close to. Um, and it for me, that cracks open like the complexity of the world that you're in that may not be seen by somebody with a different identity.
Mhm.
Yeah, everything that you just said was definitely at the root of, my inspiration to write it. Um, because even though I'm so used to it, it's really, really hard. Mary, you talk about what's hard for you. What's hard for me is to recognize that even though we're all living in the same system, that what I experience in terms of the impact of racism can't be seen. To me, it's like everywhere. It's like everywhere. It's the air. And I got another poem, right? Like air. It's like air. And so that's what's difficult for me. I've had to learn over and 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 over again that it's not that clear.
Well, do you know what this reminds me of? The story of these, I think, 7 blind people, each touching a different part of an elephant. And somebody says, describe an elephant to me. One person describes a trunk. Somebody else describes the tail. Somebody else the thickness of the leg. Somebody else the tusk. Somebody else the big floppy ears. And they all think that they are describing the totality of reality, but they're only describing the piece that they can touch. They can't see anything else. And this conversation, not just this conversation, the way we all live, to me, is that the limitations that our filters impose on us. So it's, for me, this conversation would have been worth its weight in platinum if we walk away with the thought that, oh my God, I, including me, a Black woman, see the world through filters. I see a filtered world, and I can describe my experience to you, and you can describe yours to me. There are real impacts to those filters. Some people lose their lives because of those filters, like Black trans women. It's like open season on them. Just shoot them. You have a defense. The law will excuse you. They scared you. Um, the filters matter, but we all see the world through a filter. And so I love that elephant story for that reason, for that perspective. And my last words would be in the way I see us as a team is, and I actually have the visual. We're sitting in a field at a round table. Everybody has a place at that table. There is love at the table. There's respect at the table. Everybody has a place. Everybody is valued. Everybody is beloved. And it would be, for me, grievous. Mary, had you made a decision, well, I'm just done. These people are ostracizing me. F them, bye, see ya. Um, oh, we might have to put a F-bomb warning if we ever publish this. I'm trying to be careful not to say the word. Um, um, but yeah, um, I guess that's it. I just see us as this community of people doing the best we can. And and what we've done today is remarkable. So thank you, everybody.
Mhm.
I love your vision of the round table.
Me too.
Yeah.
Mhm.
You know, there's the story, which I won't retell beautifully, but I can get the essence of it, I think, of children being offered food and a number of children, and they're told if you, the person who runs from here to the tree the fastest will get the food. And in this particular culture, the children look at each other, they all grab the food and run together to the tree. So there is no competition. There is no, I'm going to get something you're not going to get. And Alexis, as you described us in the field, it had that feeling of how much we care and support each other and will be well and more whole together.
Mhm.
Thank you. You know,
Thank you, Mary. Mhm.
Mhm.
I'm reminded of that expression that people used to use, I've got your back, or we've got your back. I, in my experience so far with this team, we have each other's backs.
Mhm. We have each other's backs and we're all really terrible at email, except Mary.
That is so true.
It made me laugh. Yeah.
and we have a lot of grace about it. Hello. I love
Mhm.
that there's just no blaming in this group. It doesn't exist. It's like it's a concept foreign to us.
Mhm.
We don't do that. And I just love it. I wish that were that way for all people, that they could be in the company of people who don't assume the worst, who assume good intention and love. And I will say that I have a couple of hours to share with my family before I go to the airport.
Oh, that's right.
So
yeah.
I'd love to have us, if we're comfortable, to find a way to wrap up. And I'm so grateful. Thank you all so much for bringing me along in my journey and helping me learn, no matter how clumsily it happens.
Yeah, it's really been a meaningful conversation to me, so I can't remember whose idea it was to have this, but thank you. Um, and if we are winding up, I just wanted to ask the group how I move forward in making this an episode. Uh, I think we had talked about as one thing to do the whole conversation recorded and put out there, which is good for me. But I also think maybe a more condensed version, just knowing people's listening habits and being unsure that everybody would want to listen to you know 2 or 3 hours or whatever it's been.
Mhm.
What feels right to the team in terms of how we put this out into the world. Maybe that's something we can decide by email, haha.
I do
Or
wonder.
have another discussion.
Yeah.
But I just I think it's very been a really worthwhile conversation and will be valuable to listeners. I believe that, but I'm not sure how to what is the word, package it.
Mhm. Mhm.
Well, Sam, something I would like to do for my part is if I can get the audio, I'd like to convert it and then just do pull out the major themes. And this is for me, this is how I process. Pull out the major themes and then share that with the group. I'm just a really yeah, yeah. So if I could get a copy of the audio, I'd like to start on that.
Okay,
Okay.
great idea.
Yeah, that is a great idea. Yeah, and I feel like there's like a couple different things that just come to mind is there's the N-word conversation, there's the weaving of our lives into it and with it. And there's also the how we have chosen to bring this.
Mhm.
So those are three aspects of the conversation that just came forward for me.
Mhm.
I'm sorry, Norma, would you do them again, the three, please?
Did you write them down, Alexis?
I did.
Could you repeat them back?
Thank you.
So there's the inward conversation. There's the weaving of our lives and, how that impacted the conversation, and then how we just processed it.
Mhm. And I think at the big onset was also the idea of like how modeling how this team chooses to do things when things go sideways on this team. There was that as well.
And thanks for reminding us too of the sideways aspect. I feel like putting that at the top of the page, well, that went sideways, and then like weaving the story
Yes.
from there.
Mm-hmm.
So Sam, it may be, given what Norma just said, that they have the when things go sideways, what does one do? And this is our whole podcast concept, that you will find as you you'll give us the whole audio. I appreciate that. And then when you're looking at it as an editor, are there maybe 2 episodes, paired episodes, that would come out of it? I don't know if that's possible or if you'll see that along with one of those 3 themes, 2 or 3 shorter versions that people could choose to listen to. And Alexis, I think you mentioned someone at one point had offered a short version and the whole thing, and people could choose.
Like on being.
Yeah, Krista Tippett used to do that, and I loved it. I loved how they edited, and I also loved the unedited version. From the sound check all the way through. I just loved it.
Yeah, same.
So Sam, good luck to you, dear heart.
Well, I think certainly up for the task, but I do love the idea of sending everybody the audio, and then please make the time if you can to listen to the whole thing. I will, and draw out what you see as themes, and then that would help me distill down the shorter version. Mary, I'm open to breaking it into parts, but my first reaction is complete version for those who want it, and condensed version that hopefully includes the major themes rather than having multi-part. That's my
Okay.
initial thought.
Yeah,
I would
I agree with that one too. That one feels like a cool offering.
There are people who I let know this was happening in my life and who've supported me. And Alexis, when you said who was in the room, there are maybe 4 people who were with me today, along with a lot of spiritual guides and a lot of other support. I would wonder if you're comfortable after I get it from Sam to share the whole thing with them, or would your preference as a team be that we wait till it's posted?
I'm in favor of sharing it with beloved people in our lives. I don't see any harm in that.
Same.
Oh, you mean before, you said before it's posted?
Mhm. Because it's not that many people. You're talking about a handful of people, right, Mary?
I am.
Mhm.
I'm a little hesitant, I guess, because I know people pass things on. And before we post it, because it will be available from what we've agreed upon so far anyway. I'm just a little hesitant. Yeah.
But what if the people if we choose to pass it on to, we get them to agree not to send it out
Yeah,
until
that
we
would feel
post it?
better.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
With
And
the other
I'm guessing this is going to be people we trust deeply.
portable, yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yes. So Norma, would that be comfortable if I let them know, here's what happened today, because they're anxious for me?
Mm-hmm.
And please do not share this with anyone.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And if you weren't all in the room, you'd be the people I'd be sending it to.
That was Mary Zinn. You also heard all the other members of the Sideways team: Alia Thobani, Norma Johnson, Alexis Miles, Jess Rao, and me, Sam Fuqua. That was the complete unedited conversation that we had after our own Sideways moment that resulted from an email exchange during final production of our episode with Antonio Williams on the N-word. If you listened to the whole 2.5 hours, thank you. And if you haven't listened to the edited version yet, we encourage you to check that out. And we're always interested in your comments, which you can share via the contact form on our website. Thanks for listening to Well, That Went Sideways. We produce new episodes twice a month. You can find them wherever you get your podcasts and on our website, sidewayspod.org. Our site has information on our guests, interview transcripts, and links to more conflict resolution resources. And we encourage you to sign up for our newsletter. That's at sidewayspod.org. Our production team is Mary Zinn, Jess Rao, Norma Johnson, Alexis Miles, Alia Thobani, and me, Sam Fuqua. Our theme music is by Mike Stewart. We produce these programs in Colorado, on the traditional lands of the Arapaho, Cheyenne, and Ute nations. To learn more about the importance of land acknowledgement, visit our website, sidewayspod.org. And this podcast is a partnership with the Conflict Center, a Denver-based nonprofit that provides practical skills and training for addressing everyday conflicts. Find out more at conflictcenter.org.